ultimately be economic? We still have to answer those questions. Environmental and social impacts, the focus of big studies which we haven't started. Traffic, transportation, surface water, groundwater, hydrology, terrestrial ecology, noise, dust, visual impact, Aboriginal cultural heritage, all challenges that we have to look at. And all of these are overseen by the government approval process, a lot of different acts that regulate our activities. Everything sits under the Mineral Resources Sustainable Development Act. And even if you get approval of a mining licence with this act, you still don't have approval to mine. But we don't have a mining licence. We haven't applied for a mining licence. So, as I said, we can explain the next 12 months pretty easily, but everything that happens after that depends on the next 12 months. So, if next 12 months are successful, then hopefully we can start some of the studies, the engineering studies, where we look at what process, what type of plant, separation plant that is, and then the design of it, looking at the marketing of the product, starting the socio-economic and environmental studies. And they all fall under a big study called the Environmental Effects Statement, which takes several years to do and is very extensive and ends up something like that size in terms of paper. And all along the way, it's overseen by a government approvals process that we must comply with. So you can see that there's several years and many challenges to cross before we can think about building a mine. And this is actually part of our business plan, showing our timing. It's a Gantt chart. This is where we are now at the analysis of the 2014 drill program, and then 8 years' time we should be completing a feasibility study. Hopefully we can do it quicker, but it may take longer. To get to that point, we work on the geology, and then if the geology is looking attractive, we can move to looking at what type of mine it would be, and then doing the studies on environmentals, hydrology, geotech, socio-economic, cultural.
We see the size of the scope that you've got the retention licence that covers a huge area. I think that frightens a lot of people for a start. So one of the first queries I heard that if there was going to be a mine, that it would be a kilometre by a kilometre. Now that's a huge open area, which would have big implications, I believe, with the dust problem within our valley. So one, could you ratify what size of an open cut or mine would you plan if it did go ahead? And two, is there any truth in the fact that the monazite is a radioactive ingredient within the sands? And if it is, how would you contain that and stop cross-contamination within this valley? Because at the moment there's the multi-national, multi-million-dollar business in fresh vegetables, and any cross-contamination would put us out of business. Thank you.
So I think there were two questions, one on the size of a mine and one on monazite. So as I said, it's very hard for us to speculate on the size of a mine, but a kilometre by a kilometre, is probably a general sized mine. In the scheme of the size of that retention licence, that is 1/100th of that size of that retention licence. So it's not the whole thing that's a mine. Dust is generally suppressed with water and stockpile sealants. And monazite, I know Ian's going to want to talk about this, but I'll just say that the actual grade of monazite in the ore body and the overburden is it's 0.02%, so it's very low. There's radiation in most things, and Ian will go into that.
Sure. Yeah, so monazite, my apologies. Monazite's a mineral which basically, well, there are actually quite a lot of minerals that have a degree of radiation. Quite a lot of minerals that have a degree of radiation. Just about everything does. So if you think about different kinds of radiation, there's cosmic radiation. So when we put the flight down this morning, we would have got a little bit of that. There's radiation in the rocks and other surfaces around the world, and there's radiation even in your veggies.
The jobs for a reasonable sized mine. There's also a study done by the Minerals Council that says for every job directly created by the mine, there's 6 jobs created in the community. So it's a substantial number of jobs. In terms of another stat that they've researched is that for every dollar spent on wages, directly in mine wages, there's $3 spent into the community. So,
No, sorry about that. You need to look at the Australian Institute website and find out the truth about that one.
Did you want to make a statement?
I didn't do the research, I'm just quoting the Minerals Council.
No, the Australian Institute has something completely opposite to say about local employment. You're cherry picking, so you're paying more money and taking the people that have the expertise from the local businesses, and then you're just sending them broke.
Well, can I just,
the Australian Institute
has
has a lot to say about this sort of thing, what mining does to communities. There's no benefit whatsoever to the local communities.
I've looked at the unemployment stats of East Gippsland. The unemployment is higher in East Gippsland than the rest of rural Victoria. The beauty of Gippsland is there's a workforce. Well, it's one of the beauties of it. So there's a skilled workforce. There are actually people that fly out from here to a mine, and some of them are here tonight that have told me that they wish that we do build a mine because then they can stop fly in, fly out. Fly in, fly out's a horrible thing, and it breaks up families. It's much better if you can use a local workforce.
Rick Coleman, local landowner and manager. If your dreams come true and in 8 years' time you've got a feasible mine and the permits have all gone through, you've said Kalbar is a small company and an exploration company, would you then be looking to sell that developed product onto an actual mining company to develop, or would you be looking to run the mine yourself?
It's not part of our strategy, but if someone offered us enough money, we would. We work towards trying to build a mine, trying to find a mine, trying to build one. That's our business. But takeovers happen all the time. And sometimes you can't even avoid a takeover, like if the rest of the shareholders decide they want to sell. So,
Rob, that comment you made before about the, and it's so nearly a throwaway line, that the fingerboards looks pretty good. Can you explain a bit about that, please, and exactly where it is?
So with the fingerboards, the reason that we think it's probably a more likely area than Mossy Face as an example is that it has a reasonable grade and it has a reasonably predictable geology. So as I was showing you before on that little cross section, there's sort of 2 layers, and the upper layer is reasonably thin, which is a challenge, but it's predictable. The lower layer is thicker, but it's less predictable. And so as you're trying to work out what you want to do, you really have to try and understand what's going on in the ground. Now, the reason that the fingerboards the reason that the mineralogy is remaining at the fingerboards is that layer of gravels that you see, which sort of forms the top of the fingerboards. So that layer of gravels has sort of protected the sand underneath from being eroded, and that's what's kept that layer of mineralisation there. So that layer of mineralisation originally would have extended probably all the way across where the river is now, and over time the river's been washing it away as it forms those sort of terraces you see going down the hill. So that's one of the reasons that the area around the fingerboards is more interesting. So it has, you know, some more predictable geology, and it has some, you know, the mineralisation that's there is reasonable.